All right, welcome back. Let's look at the economic side of these numbers, and now being joined on the program by Dr. Moda Yusuf, who is the CEO, Center for Promotion of Private Enterprise. Thank you very much, Doc, for talking to us. You look at the numbers. What do you make of them?
Well, the numbers did not come as a surprise. First, in terms of the reality of poverty in Nigeria, we all know what it is. So the numbers that we are seeing are just a kind of validation of the reality that is on the ground. And even before then, we have had the projection by the World Bank, which estimates that poverty incidence in Nigeria is about 42.6%.
Yes.
That's for 2022. If we estimate that is coming to around 95 million people in abject poverty. So, that is using a monetary benchmark.
Benchmark, yes.
But now we are using multidimensional, so it's understandable that the number is much bigger. But it didn't come as a surprise at all.
And of course, not surprising, as you've said, but what exactly do they tell us?
Well, it's telling us about the quality of life. Because if you look at the metrics that have been used in this analysis, it's similar with what we have with the Human Development Index. Nigeria's rating or ranking in Human Development Index globally is 163. That's how lowly we rank. On African continent, our ranking is 32. And what is even more striking within the context of the African continent ranking is the fact that we are the biggest economy on the continent. So in terms of the GDP, we are number one. But in terms of Human Development Index, we are number 32 in Africa. So that shows the huge disconnect between our economy and the welfare of the people. So, and that speaks to what we call real issues of development. Because the economy is about human beings, it's about welfare at the end of the day. So in all the key developmental parameters, we have not been doing well at all.
But how important is this survey now? How important is it in terms of fashioning out government policies? Because the government is involved in this. The government actually was directly involved in this survey. So how important is this in terms of government policies to tackle the problem of poverty in this country? Not just at the federal level, but even also at the state and even local government level.
Yeah, it is important. And I must commend the fact that the government this time did not live in denial. You know, the government were represented at a very high level at the presentation of these reports. Because ordinarily they will have dismissed it and condemn it and look for reasons to discredit the report. But that did not happen in this instance. So I must commend the government, at least for that humility in admission that the situation is quite bad. In terms of its importance, it has a lot of significance for policy especially. Because how did we get here? You know, when we look at how we got here, we can now know how we can retrace our steps back. First, there is the economic factor in this, which is partly what I alluded to at the beginning. It is one thing to have economic growth, it's another thing to have economic development. Economic development variables captures all the key variables that have been identified in this report. And all these developmental variables, we are not doing well at all, whether you are talking of health, poverty, hunger, education, maternal mortality, and the rest of them. So we need to connect the growth to development. And the way to do that is to ensure that we have what we call economic inclusion. We have an economy that carries everybody along. So that is very key.
But you look at...
And of course,
okay.
we need
Go on.
We also need to look at the structure of spending, because the way we appropriate government resources also matters a great deal. If you look at the structure of spending at the federal, at the state, and at the local government level, they are not sufficiently addressing these developmental issues, that can help, to to address the issues of poverty, inequality, and all of that. Then the issues of productivity is very important, because what most citizens also need is the environment for them to be productive. So we need to address productivity issues, look at structural issues, look at all these other issues, so that especially the SMEs and micro enterprises and those in the formal sector can get on with their lives. They can do a lot more. They can be more productive. So from the economic point of view, these are some of the variables. Then more importantly is the macroeconomic factors, because the macroeconomic environment also has a way of accelerating poverty, particularly inflation. When people are poor, one of the biggest reasons they are poor is the fact that their purchasing power has been significantly eroded. And there is no time it has been so bad as in the last 1 to 2 years. So we need to address issues of inflation. We need to address issues of interest rates, exchange rates. All these factors affect productivity. They affect performance of small businesses and of investors. Because it is investors that create the employment. If the investors are not doing well by virtue of the macroeconomic environment, there's no way we can create jobs. And without jobs, we continue to have poverty. So from the economic point of view, from the macroeconomic point of view, we need to create the environment to allow businesses, SMEs, micro enterprises to be able to create jobs, to be able to prosper, to be able to employ more people.
There's something else
very critical in terms of policy.
Yes, Doc. There's something else I want you to speak to. When you look at the numbers, you look at the disproportion now between the poverty rate in urban areas and the poverty rate in rural areas. You look at it, multidimensional poverty is highest in rural areas, 72%. But it's just around 42% in urban areas. So what exactly does that tell us?
Well, what it tells us is that there's more prosperity in the urban centers than the rural areas.
So which means government policies will need to be concentrated on rural areas.
Exactly. That is also part of the policy of inclusion. When you are talking of an economy that is inclusive, you also look at it from the spatial perspective, so that we don't see development concentrated just in the urban centers. We need to have a dispersal of opportunities, so that we don't see people now migrating from the rural areas to the urban centers because they feel that there are no opportunities in the rural areas. There is so much poverty in the rural areas. And that also speaks to the need to develop the rural area, particularly with respect to infrastructure, with respect to connectivity, connecting the rural centers to the urban centers, so that the key activity, economic activities in the rural areas can thrive, particularly agriculture and agro-allied industries. So it's very critical for economic inclusion.
And something else, you look at the figures, the rate of child poverty in this country is really high. As a matter of fact, the bulk of those who are poor in this country are children and, of course, women. I mean, going by the statistics now. And then you look at the rate of child poverty in rural areas. It's terribly, terribly high, about 90% or so.
Yes, that is very disturbing. And for that, we also have social factors. For this, we have cultural factors, we have religious factors, maybe some ethnic factors as well. Because if you look at the poverty mapping, just as this report has shown, you have over 80% of those poor in the northern part of the country.
Exactly.
So when you are talking about education, and particularly education of the girl child, it's worse up north. So there's a correlation between the culture, the religion, and education. So if you have all that going together, it manifests in the kind of statistics that we see. Because there's no sufficient investment in education, and that has been made worse by the fact that education of the girl child is also not good enough. And generally, even across all over the world, I think we are one of the worst in terms of the children that are not in school, you know. So these are very important indicators of the fact that we need to do a lot more in terms of investment in education.
And this, of course, clearly shows that local government administration, no matter whether we like it or not, they play a very important role. And it's so unfortunate that in this country, local government administration or local governments have basically been emasculated. So when you have government at the basic level not pulling their weight, this is probably part of what you get.
I agree with you. I mean, you're on point on that, because what we have today is almost a total collapse of governance in the local government areas. There is no accountability. The level of corruption is high. Nobody is checking anything. Then, in a way, sometimes even the states kind of subdue even the local governments. So we need to strengthen governance at that level. It's very, very important. The quality of governance at the local government level is extremely low. Transparency issues, corruption, poor accountability is worse at the local government level. And we need to do a lot more in that area in order to address this very important issue.
Dr. Muda Yusuf, thank you very much for your time, and thank you for talking to us.
Thank you very much. My pleasure.
Thank you so very much. All right, we'll take a short break and we'll be right back. Don't go away.
Opinions are free, facts are sacred, but truth is universal.
How, in practical terms, can we, for instance, de-escalate the tension?
President must see himself as the President of the Federal Republic.
We know where the enemy is. 3 places. The Lake Chad Basin, the border area between Nigeria and Cameroon, and then the Sambisa Forest.
On DEJI360, we give you a complete dose of everything. Opinion, facts, and undiluted truth.
I hardly believe what politicians say in this part of the world.
A new Nigeria is possible, a future is possible.
We delve into the issues, dissect it so that you can understand it, and use it to take action.
I don't think there's any need for any governor to look for grant for ranching.
DEJI360, dissecting the issues.